are supposed to interpret it and then administer it.
See, what we're saying is that people should be passionate about their job. We should have people that love this country. People say, you know what, we don't want deregulation of petroleum products. We want the subsidy to continue. We want our refineries to be prepared. But you go talk to somebody who runs or works in one of these refineries, they will tell you why those refineries can never work.
There is a present and real danger for the corporate existence of Nigeria. Generally, this government is considered as weak.
It should not be so. If we remain like that, then we will remain in socio-economic and political thraldom.
So when you talk about passion, the people ruling us, they are not passionate.
Well, let's take
the House of Reps is not passionate. The senators are not passionate. That's why they are discussing without doing anything. Which sacrifice are they going to offer?
In Nigeria, governance is not about servanthood. Governance in Nigeria is about what can I get.
It should produce results. We want to see deliverable goals. We don't want a CBN that is running in competition to the federal government. The end focus of CBN autonomy and the end focus of governance by federal government should be improving the quality of lives of the average Nigerian and protecting our interests.
Okay, I want to put two questions in perspective. Owing to the fact that the recent NJC issue, with the salami issue, the court issue, which the NJC had to actually make a suggestion to the president, and it was, I can actually call it snubbed for a long while before he was reinstated. Don't you think that if we take out the powers of the CBN, there is going to be too much bureaucracy in terms of passing out their maybe budget, and accepting all their policies that they put to the Senate? They're going to sit on it and maybe snub them also, and then hinder whatever financial policies they're trying to put in place for the betterment.
You make a valid point, but the reverse is also the case, that the implication is that the CBN can sit on its own and create something out of nothing. Okay. So how do you balance the need to create some measure of independence for the CBN while also ensuring that there's some measure of accountability? We need to find that right balance. That balance cannot be found if the Senate or the House of Representatives are driven by ulterior motives in wanting to whittle down the autonomy of the CBN, but there also must be some measure of accountability, that the CBN cannot become a law unto itself because its budget is only approved by its board, and at the end of the day they can come up with a budget that can totally undermine the very government that they are supposed to be part of.
Okay, from still going to the Act, there is a publication in the subsection, Section 50, subsection 1 and 2, that says the bank shall within 2 months after the close of each financial year transmit to the National Assembly and the President a copy of its annual account certified by the editor, which of course is chosen by the board of the CBN also, and then a report required to be submitted to the National Assembly and the President shall be published by the bank in such a manner as the governor may direct. Okay, but at least there is a publication of the statistics and figures.
After the fact, after the damage may have been done. I mean, we're talking about a situation where, I mean, what is the impact of the audits that even public limited liability companies generate? If we were to look at some of the banks that were subsequently declared to be in trouble, take a bank like Oceanic, it had only recently released its audited account to show that all was well.
All of a sudden.
But the reality was, so these are issues that can always be structured. The issue is we need to sit down and say, based on our peculiarities and our unique challenges, what type of CBN can best serve our purpose? And when we can distill these issues, then we will be able to say, you know what, autonomy is good, but we need the autonomy with these moderations. You don't get far in the Committee of Nations because you ape other nations. You get far because you design solutions that are unique to you. Nations like India realized that they wanted to join the industrialized world. What did they do? They shut their borders. That system worked for them, and today you have Tata products. You have their vehicles, you have their air conditioners, you have their manufactured products. They are strong in the IT sector. They are strong in the software sector. So you need to find what works for you and work it.
And function by it.
Yes, that's how it works.
I like to hold that thought there so that we can have a breather. If you're just joining us, this is the agenda on Love All Plus. It comes to you every Thursday on this station, same time. If you're just joining us, we're talking about the Nigerian National Assembly and the proposed CBN Review Act. Lots of people have actually been sending emails to our email website, which says, our email address rather, agenda@loveallplus.net, and they're saying that we should talk about the Farouk Lawan issue, the Farouk Lawan and Otedola issue, which we hope to discuss immediately. The reactions, the updates, everything is in place, because this is where all those matters will be handled. Be rest assured. But we need to take a breather, and when we come back, we'll take more details on the Nigerian National Assembly and the proposed CBN Review Act. So don't go away.
Problem per se, but those that are supposed to interpret it and then administer it.
See, what we're saying is that people should be passionate about their job. We should have people that love this country. People say, you know what, we don't want deregulation of petroleum products. We want the subsidy to continue. We want our refineries to be prepared. But you go talk to somebody who runs or works in one of these refineries, they will tell you why those refineries can never work.
There is a present and real danger for the corporate existence of Nigeria. Generally, this government is considered as weak.
It should not be so. If we remain like that, then we will remain in socio-economic and political thraldom.
So when you talk about passion, the people ruling us, they are not passionate.
Well, let's take
the House of Rep is not passionate. The senators are not passionate. That's why they are discussing without doing anything. Which sacrifice are they going to offer?
In Nigeria, governance is not about servanthood. Governance in Nigeria is about what can I get.
You're welcome back. This is the agenda on Love All Plus. We're talking about the Nigerian National Assembly and the proposed CBN Review Act. I've been talking to Mr. Kingsley Omose. Thank you so much for being with us. He's actually shared so much views. This platform is heated up from friction of ideas emanating from all these matters. Okay, now we're talking about the CBN Act, and I just wanted to go back to one question again. You know, we've been talking slightly about Sanusi. Now, I want to also go back to the former CBN governor, Professor Chukwuma Soludo. Now, he has specifically warned in this direction that the amendment will bring the CBN governor under a politically appointed board chairman and remove the deputy governors from the board. What is your take?
Yeah, I mean, there's some sense in what he's saying.
Yes. Because he's been in the system.
Yes.
He's supposed to be.
But because, again, because the National Assembly is motivated by very narrow considerations, they're coming in with a sledgehammer. But what they have is a proposal.
Okay.
And we should allow for robust engagements to fine-tune and arrive at what is in our best interest. Let's not only look at it from the perspective of the National Assembly, because the issue was they felt that, or they feel that the budget of the central bank should be brought forward for the consideration of central bank. I mean, by law, virtually all other institutions that have semi-autonomous status, they do need to seek the approval of the National Assembly for their budgets to be finalized. And we know what the process is like.
Yes.
You have to go to the National Assembly to lobby. Yes, but are we saying that that is the only way to look at the autonomy of the central bank? What are the best practices? Do we have countries that are like Nigeria, countries like Indonesia that have the same large population, that also are resource rich, and that are also developing economy? How do the countries like this, countries like Pakistan, how do they manage the relationship between the CBA, their central banks, and the government and their parliaments? So we need to find something that works, also probably by looking at best practices and then coming back and devising something that is quite unique. And we also have to understand that in the early days when this law was passed, it was done at the early, it was done when our democracy was just getting off the blocks. And the level of interest and awareness regarding what type of CBN we wanted wasn't that high. But we are now, this is about the 12th or 13th year into our democratic practice. And I think there's nothing wrong in looking at the CBN Act once again and saying, you know what, we're not happy with the measure of autonomy that is being exercised by the central bank. But We are not also insisting that we have a central bank that is under the beck and call of the political establishment. Where do we strike the balance? What type of board do we need to have? We've been talking about Nigeria being a federation of states. Do we now go into the practice where each state technically has like its own reserve board chairman, or are we going to have like based on the geopolitical zone, where each zone is mandated to produce, are you with me, a semi-autonomous member who will be part of the board, knowing his status as representing that zone? I mean, that's what happens in some other nations. We need to craft something that will work for us and have a solution that will suit us, and not necessarily because we have to please the IMF or the World Bank or dance to the tune of the politicians. Okay,
I want to chip in something here now. Centralizing the power, okay, which is slightly what we've been talking about, the side you've been taking actually, that we need to centralize the power, that's take the power more to the government, not leaving CBN as an autonomy.
Not necessarily. It doesn't have to be government.
Okay.
It doesn't have to. I mean, if we say that the central bank has to be more accountable, there are other means of defining accountability.
Not leaving it to wholly define itself.
For instance, the power to appoint the auditors,
to audit its own report.
Yes, should be taken, could be taken away from the central bank and given to the National Assembly. In America, for instance, they have an office they call the Congressional Budget Office. The job of that office, which is independent of all the arms of state, is that any proposal that is going into the going to go to the National Assembly, they will sit down and calculate how, going forward, it's likely to affect the economy and the budget. Remember, let me take you a little, of course, just to explain the point I'm talking about. Take the 13% derivation on revenue sharing. It was good on paper when we passed it. But did we do a long-term simulation to know that if over time you continue to pay 13% of oil revenues to the oil-producing states, how that will affect the other states? We don't have systems that carry out that kind of analysis. Likewise, if we're going to amend the CBN Act to either switch the autonomy of the central bank either to a political establishment or to a more people-oriented establishment, do we have simulations to know how it will play out so that we are guided by the likely implications or impacts of the various systems? And then at the end of the day, we see that that's why we need to allow for more robust engagements. Typically, the practice of the National Assembly will be a day or two before they pass the law. They will issue an ad in the papers inviting whole constituencies to come for one day to air their views. And those they don't allow for. We should have seminars. We should have workshops over a period of. We should have a situation that says, guys, we're going to do this in another 9 months or 1 year.
Yes.
Can we have? And then at the end of the day, they have committees that are sitting down who weigh and look at what has been prepared, and they pass that to the National Assembly. Based on that, the National Assembly is now in a position to know what is going to be done, because whatever needs to be done has to be done in the overall interest of Nigerians.
Okay, let's look at the salaries now. The bill also stipulates that instead of the board of the CBN fixing the salaries and allowances of its governors and deputy governors, it should now be done by the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, RMAFC, subject to the approval of the president.
Again, that brings them under some level of political consideration, but I don't see anything wrong in there being a cap to the salaries of public employees. The implication would be that because you have autonomy, then you can sit down and just fix your salaries. Again, it shows that people are realizing that the initial law as drafted, where the CBN was given such tremendous powers and the board was given such tremendous responsibility, there is need to review it. How do we do it? You're looking at the central bank that can appoint his own auditor, that can fix his own salaries, that can intervene in the economy the way it likes, that can introduce policies that border on political considerations without having to take the government into consideration. Take, for instance, the Sharia banking issue. That wasn't a government policy. It was something that came from the CBN itself.
CBN. Okay. I thought you
and you could see that, but for the public outcry, the central bank governor took a position that the central bank had the ability or the authority to impose Sharia banking without any legal backing. Now, if you backtrack a little and you realize that beyond Sharia banking being an Islamic form of banking, it also represents a whole different type of banking system. In nations where you have either strict Sharia banking system or you have Sharia system running side by side with the more Western banking system, there are whole structures, whole regulations, whole policies, whole laws that go into place to sustain that. Because it's not just a question of you're saying that we want to introduce Sharia system. There's a whole legal system that should back that. Do we have the kind of judges, the kind of training, the kind of capacities that can apply Sharia banking systems, or you are assuming that the existing court system and the existing court structures will be able to use them to enforce Sharia decisions? But nobody looked at that consideration. But the man says, going by the law that sets me up, I have the right to do that. Now, I'm saying that that should not be. We should have a system that should be able to keep the central bank in check. So if they want to come up with policies that we recognize are going to create more problems than solve, even if they are right, we should be able to call them to order. We shouldn't say because the central bank has autonomy and then we allow them imply or impose a Sharia system that creates a religious divide, and the next thing you're having a sectarian problem, and the whole country goes in flames. And while the CBN is intact, the very nation that is supposed to be superintending in terms of monetary support ceases to exist.
So if you say the National Assembly should, or the CBN should be responsible or answerable to the National Assembly, what about the National Assembly fixing their own salary? Because I know some of these issues might have even come up when the central bank governor Sanusi came up recently to say that the CBN, rather the National Assembly members, the lawmakers are earning too much and they should be, their salary actually made it public and said they should be cut down with some percentage. I think those were the times these issues came up, and now they've been looking for a way, to meddle into this issue. Who reviews the National Assembly?
Which is why I said the National Assembly is motivated by very narrow considerations. That is the problem. But the salaries of National Assembly members are fixed by the revenue mobilization. I think is the revenue.
Yeah, revenue mobilization allocation and fiscal commission.
Yes, yeah. But the fact is, because over time the National Assembly has also appropriated some powers to itself. Yeah. They've gone out of the way to
take control,
create systems that allow them to appropriate monies. Okay. But if the federal government were alive to its responsibilities, all these are instances or areas for which the National Assembly can be held to account. For instance, these are public funds. The National Assembly cannot apply those funds unless these things are being done in accordance with laid down procedures and standards that are contained in the public service regulations. So yes, the Revenue Mobilization Commission has a responsibility to fix, and as part of that, you could throw in the CBN in the process.
Okay, if you throw in the CBN, actually the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission, their powers are limited to just salaries. And the bulk of the money with the National Assembly members are in terms of their allowances, the travel allowance, and to name a few. Okay, now, who regulates the allowances of the CBN?
Of course,
because if you
can, there's little you can do in this regard. If you do have personnel who want to abuse the system or game the system, there's little you can do. Part of how you over time keep these things in check is by having good internal audit systems. But again, you realize